The old farmhouse stood on a slight hill, its paint peeling like dry skin in the summer sun. Windows, once bright, now sagged, and a few were even patched with cardboard. This was Sarah's home, a place that held generations of her family's stories within its creaky walls. She was a single mom, her heart full of love for her two children, 8-year-old Lily and 10-year-old Tom. But her pockets often felt empty. Every day was a careful dance of making ends meet, stretching pennies and hoping nothing big would break. The farmhouse wasn't just old, it was truly falling apart. The roof leaked in 3 different places when it rained, and Sarah had strategically placed buckets to catch the drips. The floorboards groaned underfoot, some so soft you had to step carefully, imagining a giant could easily put a foot right through. In winter, the wind whistled through cracks in the walls, making the old house feel less like a cozy home and more like a drafty barn. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe to never miss a new video. And tell me, where are you watching this video from? I love seeing all different people come together for these stories. Sarah spent countless evenings patching holes with whatever she could find, her fingers often stiff from the cold. She tried to make it a game with Lily and Tom, calling it Operation Cozy, but even they knew it was a serious effort to keep warm. Despite its flaws, the farmhouse was everything to Sarah and her children. It was where Lily had learned to walk, taking her first wobbly steps across the worn rug in the living room. It was where Tom had built his first magnificent blanket fort, an epic structure that took up half their small dining area for a week. The ancient apple tree in the yard, gnarled and wise, was their favorite climbing spot, its branches holding countless secrets whispered by the wind. They had carved their initials into its bark, right next to ones they imagined belonged to their grandparents and great-grandparents. For Sarah, the house was a living memory of her own childhood. She remembered her grandmother's laughter echoing through these very rooms, the smell of fresh-baked bread always lingering in the kitchen. Every chipped teacup in the cupboard, every faded photograph on the mantelpiece, told a piece of their family's long history. This wasn't just a house, it was a warm blanket of memories wrapped around them, even if the blanket had a few holes. But the house demanded more than memories. It demanded repairs that Sarah simply couldn't afford. The pipes often froze in winter, leaving them without water for days. The electricity flickered, sometimes going out entirely, plunging them into darkness. Sarah would light candles and tell stories, trying to make it an adventure. But deep down, she worried. She worried about the safety of her children, about the cold, about the very real possibility that one day, a part of the house might just give way. Her meager earnings from her job at the local diner barely covered food and basic necessities. There was no extra money for a new roof, new plumbing, or fixing the sagging foundation. She'd tried to get loans, but the house was so old and in such disrepair that banks saw it as a risk, not an investment. Each denial was a fresh stab of disappointment, a reminder of her inability to provide the safe, warm home her children deserved. The children, despite their young age, understood the struggle. They rarely asked for new toys, knowing that every dollar was important. They helped Sarah with chores, sweeping dust that seemed to appear from nowhere and helping to carry water when the pipes were frozen. They loved their home, truly. But even they would sometimes look at a particularly large crack in the ceiling or a drafty window with a worried frown. Sarah often sat on the porch swing, which creaked a tune as old as the house itself, watching her children play beneath the apple tree. A knot of sadness and worry would tighten in her chest. How much longer could they hold on to this piece of their past? How much longer could this old house protect them when it couldn't even protect itself from the elements? The love for her children was a fierce fire inside her, pushing her to make impossible choices, even if it meant saying goodbye to a part of her heart. The day Sarah received the official report felt like a punch to her stomach. An inspector, a kind man with tired eyes, had spent hours examining every corner of the old farmhouse. He'd poked at the foundation, climbed into the attic, and even tapped along the walls with a small hammer. His final words were gentle but firm. "Sarah, this house is no longer safe. The structural damage is too severe. It would cost more to fix it than to build a brand new home." A cold dread spread through Sarah. She knew it was bad, but hearing it put into such stark terms, knowing that her children were living in a house that could truly harm them, was terrifying. The thought of losing the house, the very heart of their family's history, was almost unbearable. But the inspector's words about safety echoed in her mind. A new roof, new pipes, a stable foundation. These weren't just comforts. They were necessities for keeping her children out of harm's way. For weeks, Sarah wrestled with the decision. She talked to friends, looked into every possible grant or charity, but every door closed. The cost of making the house safe was simply astronomical, far beyond anything she could ever hope to earn. She spent sleepless nights pacing the creaking floorboards, tears silently tracing paths down her cheeks. How could she tell Lily and Tom? How could she explain that the place they called home, the place filled with their laughter and memories, had to go? Finally, with a heavy heart, Sarah made the only choice she could. She called the demolition company. The conversation was brief, formal, and filled with a sense of finality that made her hand tremble as she hung up the phone. The farmhouse, her family's legacy, would be torn down. Breaking the news to Lily and Tom was one of the hardest things Sarah had ever done. She gathered them on the old porch swing, the same swing where she'd sat worrying for so long. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft oranges and purples, making the old house look beautiful and peaceful, as if unaware of its fate. "Kids," she began, her voice a little shaky, "we need to talk about the house." Tom, always quick to sense trouble, looked up with wide, worried eyes. "Is it falling down, Mom? Did the roof leak again?" Lily, nestled close to her mother, clutched Sarah's hand tightly. Sarah took a deep breath. "The house, it's very, very old, and it's not safe anymore. It would cost too much money to fix it, money we don't have. So we have to let it go." Tom's face crumpled. "Let it go? What does that mean, Mom?" "It means," Sarah said, tears welling in her eyes, "that they're going to tear it down. We'll have to find a new place to live." A stunned silence followed. Then Lily started to cry, soft whimpers at first, quickly turning into loud sobs. "But Mom, our tree, my room, where will we live? This is our home." Tom, usually brave, had tears streaming down his face too. "No, we can't. What about all our stuff? What about the fort?" He pointed to the apple tree, his voice cracking. "What about our apple tree?" Sarah pulled them both into a tight hug, holding them close as their tears soaked her shirt. Her own heart felt like it was breaking into a million pieces. She tried to explain, tried to soothe them, promising they would find a new, safe home, a place where the roof wouldn't leak and the floors wouldn't creak. But her words felt hollow even to her own ears. How could a new house ever replace the centuries of love and life embedded in these old walls? For the next few days, a heavy cloud hung over the farmhouse. Lily and Tom walked through the rooms with solemn faces, touching everything as if saying goodbye. They traced their fingers over the faded wallpaper, looked out the cracked windows, and spent hours under the apple tree, whispering secrets and drawing pictures in the dirt. They packed their most cherished toys, but every item they put into a box felt like a small piece of their home being taken away. Sarah watched them, her heart aching. She saw the sadness in their eyes, the way they clung to each other a little more. She knew this was the right decision for their safety, but it felt terribly wrong, like she was betraying the very essence of their family. The farmhouse, once a symbol of their heritage, was now a symbol of their hardship, a beautiful but dangerous relic that they had to leave behind. The demolition date was set for the following week, a looming deadline that cast a long, dark shadow over their days. The morning sun, usually a welcome sight, felt cold and harsh on the day of the demolition. A huge yellow machine, a bulldozer with a powerful metal arm, sat waiting silently in the field next to the farmhouse. Its tracks were thick and muddy, ready to roll over what had been a home for so many years. Two men in hard hats stood by, looking serious, their voices low as they talked. Sarah and her children stood a little distance away, close enough to see but far enough to be safe. They huddled together, a small, sad group under the big, old apple tree. The tree, usually a place of joy and games, felt like a silent witness to their sorrow. Lily clutched a worn teddy bear, its button eyes reflecting her own sadness. Tom had his arms crossed tightly over his chest, his face pale and set, trying hard not to cry. Sarah wrapped her arms around both of them, wishing she could shield them from the pain of this moment. The air was still, broken only by the chirping of crickets and the distant caw of a crow. It felt like the whole world was holding its breath. The smell of damp earth and old wood hung heavy, mixing with the sharp scent of diesel fuel from the bulldozer. Sarah could feel her heart pounding, a heavy drum in her chest. She looked at the farmhouse one last time, trying to memorize every detail. The faded blue door, the crooked porch swing, the tiny window in her bedroom that always caught the first light of dawn. Then, one of the workers climbed into the bulldozer. The engine roared to life, a deep, rumbling sound that shook the ground beneath their feet. Lily gasped and buried her face in Sarah's side. Tom flinched, his eyes fixed on the machine. Slowly, powerfully, the bulldozer began to move. Its metal arm lifted, a giant claw reaching out. It moved towards the front of the farmhouse, towards the very spot where Sarah had planted her first rosebush years ago. The first impact was loud and jarring. A crash, a splintering sound that made everyone jump. A cloud of dust billowed up, smelling of dry wood and old plaster. A section of the porch railing, where they used to sit and watch fireflies, crumbled away. Lily let out a small sob. The bulldozer pulled back, then pushed forward again, its metal arm now aimed at the living room wall. With another powerful shove, the wall gave way. Bricks tumbled, wood snapped, and dust exploded outwards. Sarah could see inside, a glimpse of the faded wallpaper, the ghost of their fireplace. It was like watching a wound open up in something alive. Tom whispered, "Mom, can we go, please?" His voice was small and shaky. Sarah nodded, her own throat tight with unshed tears. She wanted to run, to close her eyes and pretend this wasn't happening. But she felt rooted to the spot, compelled to witness the end of an era. She wanted to be there for her children, to show them that even in sadness, they were together. The bulldozer continued its work, relentless and powerful. Each crunch and groan of the old house was a stab to Sarah's heart. The kitchen, where they'd shared so many meals, crumpled. The roof sagged, then collapsed with a sickening thud, sending up another cloud of thick gray dust. It was no longer a house, but a pile of broken pieces, memories scattering with the wind. The workers, efficient and focused, didn't seem to notice the quiet heartbreak unfolding nearby. For them, it was just another job, another old building to clear away. But for Sarah, Lily, and Tom, it was the end of a chapter, a painful farewell to a home that had sheltered their family for generations. The sun climbed higher, but the air remained heavy with the weight of what was being lost. The sounds of destruction filled the morning, each crash echoing the emptiness growing inside them. They watched, silent and heartbroken, as their beloved farmhouse slowly, irrevocably, turned into a mound of rubble and dust. The bulldozer continued its work, pushing piles of splintered wood and broken bricks. The farmhouse was almost gone, reduced to a heap of rubble where their kitchen once stood. Dust filled the air, thick and gray, making the sun look hazy. Sarah, Lily, and Tom still watched from under the apple tree, their faces streaked with dirt and dried tears, their hearts heavy with sadness. Suddenly, a loud metallic clang ripped through the air. It wasn't the usual crunch of wood or grind of gears. This sound was sharper, deeper, like metal hitting something incredibly solid. The whole bulldozer lurched, shuddering violently. Its powerful engine sputtered, then coughed, and finally died, leaving an eerie silence where only moments before there had been a roar of destruction. The driver, a burly man named Mike, was thrown forward in his seat. He gripped the controls, a puzzled frown on his face. What in the blazes was that? He muttered to himself. He'd driven bulldozers for 20 years, demolished hundreds of buildings, but he'd never felt a jolt quite like that. It wasn't just a big rock, it felt different. He tried to restart the machine, but it only coughed weakly. Mike sighed, shaking his head. This was going to delay his schedule. He climbed down from the high cab, his heavy boots thudding on the ground. Dust swirled around his legs as he walked towards the front of the bulldozer, where its giant metal blade was stuck. The other worker, who had been directing traffic from a safe distance, walked over, concern on his face. "Everything all right, Mike?" "What was that noise?" "Don't know, Jim. Hit something hard, really hard. Felt like a brick wall, but we're past where the foundation was," Mike replied, squinting through the dust. He peered under the enormous blade, trying to see what had stopped his powerful machine dead in its tracks. From under the apple tree, Sarah and the children had also heard the strange clang. They watched, curiosity slowly replacing their deep sadness. Tom pointed. "Mom, what was that? Did the bulldozer break?" Sarah, wiping a tear from Lily's cheek, watched Mike. His confused expression was clear even, from their distance. It was definitely not a normal demolition sound. Mike bent down, trying to get a better look. The bulldozer's blade was pushed deep into the earth, where the very center of the old house used to be. The ground there was usually just soft soil and old plumbing, but now something dark and solid was jammed against the blade. It looked like a large, rectangular shape, half buried in the soil. It wasn't a pipe, and it certainly wasn't a normal rock. It had a peculiar, old-fashioned look to it. He nudged it with his foot. It didn't budge. He tried to scrape away some of the dirt with his gloved hand. The material felt like old, dense wood, almost petrified, hardened by years in the ground. It was much too big to be a simple plank. "Looks like a really old tree stump, maybe?" Jim suggested, joining him. "No, this isn't wood from a tree," Mike replied, his voice thoughtful. "This feels different. It's too straight, too solid, like it was put here on purpose." He tried to pry at it with a crowbar he kept in his toolbox, but the object held firm. It was clearly very heavy and very deep. Sarah, her curiosity now fully awakened, started to walk slowly towards the scene, pulling Lily and Tom along with her. The noise had been so odd, and the way Mike was looking at the ground, it felt important. The sadness in her heart was still there, but a tiny spark of wonder had just been lit. What could possibly be buried so deeply under their old house? And why would it stop a giant bulldozer? As they got closer, the strange, dark object began to peek out more clearly from the disturbed earth, waiting to reveal its secret. Sarah, with Lily clinging to one hand and Tom pressing close to her other side, carefully picked her way through the fresh rubble and dust towards the stalled bulldozer. The air still smelled of damp earth and crushed wood, but a new feeling, a tingling mix of worry and wonder, had replaced some of their sadness. Mike, the bulldozer driver, was still trying to figure out what he'd hit. He had scraped away more dirt with his small hand shovel, revealing more of the strange object. When Sarah got closer, she could see it clearly. It wasn't a rock or a pipe or even an old tree stump. It was definitely a box. "It's a box," Lily whispered, her eyes wide. Tom took a step closer, his earlier fear forgotten in his excitement. "A really old box." Mike straightened up, dusting off his hands. "You're right, kid. It's a box, all right. A mighty old one by the looks of it, and it's buried pretty deep." The box was made of dark, heavy wood, almost black from being underground for so long. Its edges were worn smooth, and the surface was rough with dirt and age. It looked like it had no fancy carvings or decorations, just plain, strong wood meant to protect whatever was inside. It was rectangular, about the size of a small chest, and looked incredibly heavy. Parts of it were broken where the bulldozer blade had slammed into it, revealing glimpses of even darker wood underneath. Sarah knelt down, brushing away more of the loose soil with her trembling fingers. It's really old," she murmured, feeling a strange connection to the object. It had been hidden beneath her home, beneath the very spot where her living room, where she'd spent so many happy hours with her children, once stood. How many years had it been there? Silent and secret. "Looks like it's been here for a very, very long time," Mike agreed, looking at the box with a new interest. "Probably buried before your farmhouse was even built, or maybe right when it was put up, deep under the foundation." He pointed to some rust-colored streaks on the wood. "See these? Looks like old metal straps or hinges that have mostly rusted away." This was sealed up good. Lily and Tom huddled beside their mom, their small hands reaching out to touch the ancient wood, then pulling back, as if afraid to disturb its long sleep. The rough texture, the coldness of the earth still clinging to it, felt mysterious and important. "Do you think it's treasure, Mom?" Tom asked, his voice barely a whisper, a hopeful spark in his eyes. Sarah didn't know what to think. Treasure seemed like something out of a storybook, not something you found buried under a crumbling farmhouse. But what else would be hidden so carefully, so deeply, that it could stop a bulldozer? Mike called over to Jim, the other worker. "Hey, Jim, come take a look at this. We got ourselves a buried mystery here." Jim walked over, curiosity etched on his face. He whistled when he saw the box. "Well, I'll be. That's not something you see every day. Looks like something from another time." Sarah felt a strange mix of emotions. The sorrow for her lost home was still there, a dull ache. But now a powerful sense of curiosity and excitement was blooming. This box, hidden beneath their very feet for possibly hundreds of years, was a puzzle. a secret waiting to be uncovered. It was almost as if the old house, in its final moments, had decided to give up one last secret, a final, unexpected gift. The bulldozer had not just destroyed a home, it had uncovered a piece of forgotten history right there in their own backyard. They all looked at the box, a silent, dark presence in the dusty ground, wondering what incredible story it held within its ancient wooden walls. The discovery of the old wooden box brought the demolition work to a complete halt. Mike, the bulldozer driver, and Jim, the other worker, carefully worked to free the ancient container from the grasp of the earth. They used smaller shovels, and even their hands, gently scraping away the dirt that had held it captive for so long. Sarah, Lily, and Tom watched every movement with wide, eager eyes. The sorrow they had felt just moments before was now replaced by a buzzing excitement, a feeling that something truly extraordinary was about to happen. "Be careful," Sarah whispered, as Mike gently brushed away soil near a rusted metal hinge. Even though it wasn't her property anymore, this felt like a family secret, something intimately connected to the land her ancestors had lived on. The box was stubborn. It had settled deep into the soil, packed tight by years of pressure from the house above. Mike grunted with effort, pulling at the box, but it wouldn't budge. "This thing is heavier than it looks," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Feels like it's full of lead." Jim joined him, and together, with a concerted heave, they managed to pry it loose from the stubborn earth. A soft, earthy smell rose from the newly exposed soil. The box was lifted slowly, carefully, out of its deep hole. As it came free, more dirt fell away, revealing its true size and weight. It was indeed quite large, about 2 feet long and a foot wide, and clearly very heavy. They carried it over to a flatter, cleaner spot away from the rubble, near the old apple tree where Sarah and her children had been standing. They set it down with a soft thump. The box was covered in layers of caked dirt, making its dark wood even darker. Parts of it were cracked from the bulldozer's hit and from simply being so old. The metal straps and hinges were almost completely rusted away, like fragile brown lace. Lily and Tom immediately knelt beside it, running their small fingers over the rough, dusty wood. "It's really dirty, Mom," Lily observed, a little bit of awe in her voice. "And heavy," Tom added, trying to lift one corner. "What do you think is inside?" Everyone was quiet for a moment, looking at the box. The excitement was mixed with a strange kind of fear. What if it was nothing? What if it was something scary? The unknown lay locked within those ancient walls. "All right," Mike said, breaking the silence. "Let's see if we can get this open. Don't think we need a key for this one. Those hinges are practically dust." He pulled out a small pry bar from his toolbox. Sarah felt her heart race. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. "Wait," she said, her voice a little shaky. "Let me try first." This was her family's land, her family's history. It felt right for her to be the one to open it. Mike nodded, stepping back respectfully. Sarah knelt again, her hands hovering over the lid. The wood felt rough and ancient under her touch. She could feel the faint tremor in her hands. She looked at Lily and Tom, their faces a mixture of wonder and impatience. They were practically vibrating with anticipation. She found a spot where the old wood was most damaged from the bulldozer's blade, near one of the rusted hinges. Taking a deep breath, she slowly, carefully, began to pull at the lid. The wood groaned, a soft, dry sound, like an old person sighing. Dust, fine and ancient, puffed up from the seams. The lid didn't lift easily. It was stuck, sealed by centuries of dirt and dampness. Sarah pulled harder, using all her strength, her muscles straining. Lily and Tom leaned closer, their eyes glued to her hands. Mike and Jim stood a little further back, also holding their breath. With a final, protesting creak, the lid slowly began to rise, exposing a sliver of darkness within. The smell of old earth and something else, something musty and sweet, wafted out. Everyone leaned in closer, their faces alight with a shared, breathless anticipation. What incredible secret had waited all this time, hidden beneath their old home, to finally be revealed? With one last, strong pull, Sarah managed to heave the lid of the ancient wooden box fully open. A gasp escaped her lips, and then Lily and Tom cried out in amazement. Mike and Jim, who had been holding their breath, stepped closer, their eyes wide with disbelief. Inside the dusty darkness of the box lay a dazzling display of objects that shimmered and sparkled even in the hazy sunlight. It was a treasure, just like Tom had hoped. The first thing that caught their eyes was a pile of old, gleaming gold coins. They were dull with age, but their golden color was unmistakable. Sarah reached in and picked one up. It felt heavy and smooth in her palm, with strange markings she didn't recognize. There were dozens, maybe hundreds of them, nestled together at the bottom of the box. On top of the coins, carefully wrapped in what looked like very old, brittle cloth, were jewels. Sarah unwrapped a bundle with trembling fingers. Inside lay a necklace, its silver chain tarnished, but its stones, deep red rubies, sparkling green emeralds, and bright blue sapphires, gleamed as if they had just been polished. Then came a pair of earrings, each with a single large pearl that glowed softly. There were rings with different colored gems and brooches shaped like flowers, all glinting with a soft, timeless beauty. "Sparkles!" Lily exclaimed, reaching out a tiny hand towards a particularly shiny diamond ring. "Look, Mom, so many sparkles." Tom, usually more reserved, was practically bouncing on his knees. "Gold coins, real gold coins! We're rich, Mom, we're rich." Sarah could barely speak. Her mind raced. These weren't just old trinkets. These were precious, valuable items. The sheer quantity, the quality of the gems, the unmistakable glint of real gold. It was beyond anything she could have ever imagined. Her hands shook as she carefully placed the necklace back down. But the box held more than just glittering wealth. Beneath the jewels and coins, tucked carefully into a separate, smaller compartment that seemed to have been designed to protect them, were bundles of papers. They were tied with faded ribbons and wrapped in what felt like very old, thick parchment. The paper was yellowed and fragile, covered in elegant, looping handwriting. Sarah carefully picked up one bundle. The paper felt delicate, almost like it would crumble in her hands. The ink was faded, but she could make out some words. They looked like old letters, perhaps deeds or important documents. She couldn't understand all of it, but one name jumped out at her: Eleanor. It was her great-great-grandmother's name, the woman who had first settled this land. "What are those, Mom?" Tom asked, his excitement shifting slightly to curiosity about the papers. "I think they're old papers, maybe letters," Sarah said, her voice full of wonder. "They look very important." She carefully put them back, knowing they would need to be handled with extreme care and perhaps looked at by an expert. Mike and Jim stood silently, their jaws slightly dropped. Mike finally found his voice. "Well, I've never seen anything like it. Not in all my years. You hit the jackpot, Sarah. This is a real, honest-to-goodness treasure." A wave of emotion washed over Sarah. It wasn't just the monetary value, though that alone was staggering. It was the sudden, overwhelming feeling that her ancestors, who had lived and loved in this very spot, had left a part of themselves behind, a secret waiting for the right moment to be found. The farmhouse might be gone, but its final act had been to reveal this incredible, hidden gift. The children, no longer sad about their lost home, were now completely captivated by the sparkling contents of the box. Lily picked up a small, shiny button, thinking it was a gem, while Tom carefully touched a gold coin. Their faces, once tear-stained, were now alight with pure joy and wonder. The old dusty box had brought a magic they never expected, turning a day of heartbreak into a moment of astonishing discovery. The dazzling treasure lay before them, sparkling in the sunlight. But it was the old, fragile papers that truly held the key to its story. Sarah, with careful hands, gently unrolled one of the brittle parchments. The handwriting was old-fashioned, delicate, and flowing. But as she squinted, she recognized familiar names and dates. "These are from my great-great-grandmother, Eleanor," Sarah exclaimed, her voice filled with awe. "The one who first lived here, in the very first house built on this land." The papers were indeed letters and a kind of diary, written by Eleanor herself. As Sarah read snippets aloud, a remarkable story began to unfold. Eleanor had been a strong, resourceful woman who lived through a very difficult time, many, many years ago. It was a time when the country was in turmoil, perhaps during a war or a period of great unrest, when people didn't feel safe. Eleanor, it seemed, had come from a wealthy family. But when trouble arrived, she had been forced to flee her original home. She had gathered her most precious belongings, her family jewels, her savings and gold coins, and fled to this remote land, hoping to start a new, safer life. This very land where Sarah's farmhouse had just stood. The letters told of her fear, her journey, and her determination to protect what little she had left. She had buried the treasure herself, deep beneath the spot where she planned to build her new home, the very first farmhouse. She wanted to keep it safe from robbers or anyone who might try to take it from her family. It was meant to be a hidden nest egg, a way to rebuild their lives if all else failed. She buried it so no one would find it, Sarah explained to Lily and Tom, her voice hushed. She was scared for her family, just like I was scared for you when the house wasn't safe. The children listened intently, their eyes fixed on the gleaming gold and jewels, now understanding the deep history behind them. But why was it forgotten? As Sarah continued to read, a sad part of the story emerged. Eleanor had lived a long and happy life in her new farmhouse, raising her children and grandchildren. The danger passed, and the need for the hidden treasure became less urgent. She had planned to tell her eldest child about it one day, to pass on the secret. However, as she grew very old, her memory began to fade, like an old photograph losing its colors. She became ill and, sadly, passed away before she could share the important secret of the buried box. Her children, and their children after them, never knew about the treasure hidden beneath their feet. They lived in the house, played in the yard, and walked over the very spot where a fortune lay sleeping. Generations came and went, each one struggling in their own way, never knowing that a solution to many of their problems lay just inches below the floorboards. The story of the hidden treasure became a forgotten whisper in the wind, lost to time. So, it was just forgotten? Tom asked, amazed. Yes, sweetie, Sarah said, gently touching his hair. Completely forgotten. Until today. Until the old house, in its last moments, decided to give us its greatest secret. A profound sense of wonder settled over Sarah. It wasn't just money. It was a connection to her past, a tangible link to the brave woman who had founded their family on this very spot. Eleanor's foresight, her love for her family, had stretched across centuries. Waiting patiently for the right moment, for the right descendant to find it. And that descendant, by a stroke of fate, was Sarah, who needed it more than anyone knew. The demolition, a symbol of their loss, had become the unexpected key to their family's forgotten legacy. The secret of the treasure didn't stay a secret for long. Mike and Jim, the demolition workers, were simply too amazed by what they had seen to keep it to themselves. They told their friends, who told their neighbors, and soon the story of the hidden gold and jewels found under the old farmhouse was buzzing through the small town like a swarm of bees. At first, Sarah tried to keep things quiet. She carefully took the box and its precious contents to a safe place. But the whispers grew louder. People started coming by the old farmhouse site, curious to see where the amazing discovery had been made. They peeked over the temporary fences, hoping to catch a glimpse of Sarah or her children. Then the reporters arrived. A shiny car, much fancier than any other in town, pulled up the dusty driveway. Out stepped a woman with a notepad and a camera, followed by a man with a big microphone. They had heard the rumors and wanted to know the full story. Sarah, who was used to a quiet life, was a little scared by all the attention. But she knew she couldn't hide forever. She spoke to the reporter, carefully telling the story of the farmhouse, the demolition, and the incredible discovery of her great-great-grandmother Eleanor's treasure. She showed them a few of the coins and a small, sparkling brooch, making sure they understood it was a family legacy, not just a pile of riches. The next day, the story was everywhere. "Poor Mom's farmhouse demolished, reveals centuries-old treasure," screamed the headlines in the local newspaper. Pictures of Sarah, Lily, and Tom, looking a little shy but amazed, were printed next to gleaming photos of the gold coins and sparkling jewels. The story quickly spread beyond their small town. Soon, newspapers and TV stations from bigger cities were calling, wanting to hear more. Sarah and her family became famous almost overnight. People who had never met them before now knew their names. Letters poured in from all over the country, some offering congratulations, others sharing their own family stories, and a few even asking for money. It was a lot to take in for a family that had always lived a simple life. Lily and Tom found it exciting, but also a bit strange. At school, their friends crowded around them, asking endless questions about the gold coins and whether they were now super rich. Lily loved showing off a drawing of a sparkling necklace she'd made, while Tom would tell the story of the bulldozer hitting the box with a dramatic clang. They got used to seeing their faces in the newspaper and hearing their story on the radio. Sometimes, people would drive slowly past the apple tree where the treasure was found, pointing and talking. Sarah felt a mix of feelings. She was grateful for the treasure, of course, for what it meant for her children's future. But she also missed the quiet days, the simple life, before everyone knew their business. Experts like historians and jewelers also came to visit. They carefully examined the coins, identifying them as very old and valuable. They studied the jewels, confirming their worth and beauty. The old papers were handled by special experts who knew how to read ancient handwriting and preserve fragile documents. They confirmed Eleanor's story, adding more details about the time of trouble she lived through and the historical significance of the items. It was like a piece of history had suddenly come alive in their small town. The treasure wasn't just money. It was a connection to the past, a story that touched people's hearts. It was a tale of hardship, hope, and an incredible stroke of luck. Sarah, the kind but struggling single mom, was now known as the woman who, through the demolition of her beloved home, had unearthed a forgotten legacy. Their lives would never be the same. The old farmhouse might be gone, but its secret had opened up a whole new world for Sarah and her children. With the treasure carefully protected and its value confirmed by experts, Sarah's first thought was, as always, her children. The very first thing she did was to find them a new home, a safe and warm place where they wouldn't have to worry about leaks or drafts or creaking floors. It wasn't a giant mansion, because Sarah was a sensible woman, but it was a lovely, sturdy house with a big, fenced yard for Lily and Tom to play in. It had bright, clean windows and a roof that definitely did not leak. Moving into their new home felt like a dream. Lily picked out a pink bedspread for her new room, and Tom happily arranged his superhero figures on a sturdy shelf. Sarah watched them, a profound sense of relief washing over her. No more sleepless nights worrying about their safety. No more feeling the chill of winter wind inside their home. This was a fresh start, a gift from her great-great-grandmother Eleanor, spanning centuries to provide for her family. But Sarah didn't stop there. She remembered the struggles of her own childhood, the old school building with peeling paint, the worn-out playground where rusty swings were more common than new ones. Her town had always been a close-knit place, but resources were scarce. Now, with the treasure, Sarah had a chance to help not just her own family, but her entire community. She decided to use a portion of the treasure for her town. She started with the local elementary school, the very one Lily and Tom attended. The old playground was completely torn down, and in its place, a brand new park was built. It had bright, colorful slides, sturdy swings, and a soft, safe surface for children to run and play on. There were even benches for parents to sit and watch. The school building itself got a fresh coat of paint, new books for the library, and updated computers for the classrooms. The town was overjoyed. Children ran screaming with delight on the new playground, their laughter echoing where only quiet sadness had been before. Teachers had tears in their eyes when they saw the new resources. Sarah didn't want a lot of fuss or praise. She just wanted to see her community thrive. Next, she looked at the town's small community center, a place where people gathered for events and meetings, but which was in desperate need of repair. Sarah funded its renovation, making it a warm and welcoming place for everyone. She also helped set up a fund to assist other struggling families in the area, providing a little extra help for those who needed it most, just as she once had. Sarah kept some of Eleanor's beautiful jewels, choosing a simple pearl necklace that had belonged to her ancestor. It was a daily reminder of her family's history and the incredible turn of events that had changed their lives. The gold coins were carefully stored, providing a secure future for Lily and Tom, ensuring they could go to college and pursue their dreams without the burden of poverty. Her actions touched the hearts of everyone in the town. They saw that Sarah hadn't let the treasure change her into someone greedy or selfish. Instead, she had used her good fortune to uplift others, sharing the unexpected bounty with the community that had supported her through hard times. She still worked part-time at the diner, not because she needed the money, but because she loved the connection to her neighbors. She wanted to remain the same kind, humble Sarah, just now with a little less worry and a lot more hope. The discovery of Eleanor's treasure truly changed everything for Sarah and her children. It wasn't just about having money. It was about the freedom from worry, the quiet peace that settled over their lives. Sarah no longer had to stretch every penny, constantly fretting over bills or whether there would be enough food. The constant tightness in her chest, a companion for so long, finally eased. Her days, once filled with endless calculations and sacrifices, now held a sense of calm and possibility. She could buy healthy food without checking prices. She could replace torn clothes without guilt. Most importantly, she could see her children thrive without the heavy burden of their family's struggles weighing on them. Lily and Tom blossomed in their new, secure world. Lily, who had often been quiet and shy, grew more confident. She joined the school choir and started art classes, happily drawing and painting without a care. Her laughter, once soft, now bubbled freely and often. Tom, who used to worry about the house and his mom, was able to just be a kid. He joined the soccer team, spent hours exploring the new park Sarah had built, and devoured books from the newly stocked school library. He even started building more elaborate models, dreaming of becoming an engineer. Their new home was filled with light and warmth, a stark contrast to the drafty, crumbling farmhouse. They still remembered the old house fondly, often talking about the apple tree and their favorite spots. But there was no more sadness. Instead, they cherished the memories and embraced the comfort of their new surroundings. Their rooms were their own, safe and cozy, filled with their favorite things. The joy in their eyes was the greatest treasure of all for Sarah. Sarah herself found a new kind of happiness. She continued to work part-time at the diner, not out of need, but because she genuinely loved the community and the familiar faces. Her regulars noticed a lightness about her, a brightness in her smile that hadn't been there before. She still woke up early, but now it was to enjoy a quiet cup of coffee on her new porch, watching the sunrise without the shadow of debt or danger looming over her. She also had the time and resources to learn more about her great-great-grandmother, Eleanor. The old papers and diary entries became a fascinating link to the past, a way to understand the brave woman who had secured their family's future. Sarah felt a deep connection to Eleanor, a sense of gratitude that spanned generations. It was as if Eleanor, even from long ago, was still watching over them. The fame, though initially overwhelming, eventually settled down. People in town still remembered their story, but the constant media attention faded. Sarah was no longer just the poor mom. She was Sarah who found the treasure, but more importantly, Sarah who helped the town. Her generosity had cemented her place in the community, earning her respect and friendship. Life was no longer a constant battle for survival. Sarah could plan for the future, not just hope for it. She started a college fund for Lily and Tom, knowing they would have every opportunity to follow their dreams. They could take family vacations, something that had been an impossible fantasy before. The simple pleasure of a trip to the beach, or a day spent exploring a new city, became a reality. The treasure had given them not just wealth, but peace of mind, security, and the chance to live full, joyful lives. Sarah often looked at the pearl necklace, a tangible link to Eleanor, and felt a profound sense of wonder. The old run-down farmhouse, once a symbol of her struggles, had given them a miraculous gift, opening the door to a future brighter than she ever dared to imagine. Her children were happy, safe, and loved, and that was truly priceless. Years later, Sarah sat on the porch of her new, comfortable home, watching Lily and Tom play in the garden. They were older now, confident and happy, their laughter echoing through the air. The old apple tree from their former farm, carefully transplanted, now stood tall and strong in their new yard, a living bridge between their past and present. Sarah often thought about that fateful day. the day the bulldozer tore down their beloved, crumbling farmhouse. It had been a day of such deep sadness, a day she thought would mark the end of their hope. But it turned out to be the beginning of something truly incredible. She remembered the metallic clang, the confused look on Mike's face, the dusty old box emerging from the earth. It was a story she would tell for the rest of her life. A story of how a moment of loss led to a discovery that changed everything. Sarah often reflected on the lessons learned. She had held on to the old farmhouse with all her might, clinging to memories and history, even as it became dangerous. Letting go had been agonizing, a choice born of desperation to keep her children safe. Yet, it was in that very act of letting go that fate had intervened, revealing a forgotten treasure hidden for centuries. "It's funny, isn't it?" she mused aloud as Tom ran past, chasing a butterfly. "Sometimes, when you think everything is falling apart, something even better is waiting to be found." Lily, overhearing her mom, walked over and sat beside her. "Like when the old house had to go, but then we found Grandma Eleanor's treasure." Sarah smiled, pulling Lily close. "Exactly, sweetie. It taught us that sometimes good things can come from the most unexpected places. We thought losing the house was the worst thing that could happen, but it turned out to be the key to our future and to a secret our family had kept for so long. The treasure wasn't just about the gold and jewels. It was a reminder that even in moments of despair, there could be a hidden blessing. It taught them to look for the silver lining, even when the clouds seemed darkest. It showed them that change, even painful change, could open doors to new possibilities. Sarah thought of Eleanor, her brave ancestor, who had buried the treasure with hope for her family's future. And now, generations later, that hope had come to life in Sarah's hands, providing security and joy for Lily and Tom. It was a beautiful circle of life, a testament to enduring love and the surprising ways in which fate unfolds. Their lives were now filled with security, happiness, and a deep sense of gratitude. They no longer feared the future. Instead, they looked forward to it with excitement. The story of the rundown farmhouse and the incredible discovery became a cherished part of their family legend, a tale to be passed down through generations. It was a powerful reminder that even when things seem broken beyond repair, sometimes, just sometimes, a bulldozer hitting something incredible can lead to the most wonderful surprise of all. And in that surprise, a new, brighter beginning could truly blossom.